right, so get this. This week in the Bay Area, we've got some pretty wild stuff happening.
Oh, yeah.
Like seriously wild. We're talking king tides, A&D, a bunch of earthquakes, all in the same week.
Wow, that's
I know, right? It's like Mother Nature's throwing us a combo punch.
no kidding.
I mean, it's kind of exciting, but also a little bit scary. So we're diving into a recent article from KRON4 to figure out what's going on.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll find out just how high those tides are supposed to get, where exactly those earthquakes hit,
And what it all means for us.
yeah, exactly. Living in the Bay Area is always an adventure.
Always.
So you're ready to get into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with these king tides, because I've seen pictures of them before, and they're insane. Like streets and parks totally underwater.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive.
Yeah. But this article says we're looking at a peak tide of like 6.8 feet on Saturday morning.
6.8 feet.
Yeah, at 8:34 a.m., no less.
Anything special about that time?
Well, I was hoping you could tell me. Is there something going on astronomically speaking?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 8:34 a.m. on Saturday is when we'll have a syzygy.
What now?
A syzygy, that's when the sun, the moon, and the earth all line up in a straight line.
Oh, like a cosmic conga line.
Exactly. And since the moon will also be relatively close to the earth in its orbit.
Oh, so it's like a supermoon situation too.
Kind of, yeah. So all of that combined, the alignment, the moon's proximity, amplifies their gravitational pull. And that's what gives us those crazy high tides.
Okay, so it's not just any old high tide. It's like a super-powered high tide.
Yep.
Got it. But 6.8 feet?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of on the low end for a king tide?
That's a good question. It might seem that way, but...
I thought they could get way higher.
Oh, they can. In other parts of the world, absolutely. But for the Bay Area, 6.8 feet is still significant.
Okay, so it's all relative.
Exactly. And the National Weather Service has actually issued a coastal flood advisory because of it.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Especially between 5 a.m. and noon on Saturday when those high tides roll in.
So we're talking like rush hour flooding.
Potentially, yeah. Think about it. Low-lying areas along the bay shore,
Like
Crissy Field, parts of the Embarcadero, even some parking lots and streets.
Wow. Picture that on your morning commute.
Right. And the article even mentioned possible road closures.
Oh, yeah, it did. Have you ever gotten caught in a king tide flood?
Knock on wood, not yet.
It's not exactly a daily occurrence, but definitely something to be aware of, especially if you live or commute near the bay.
For sure. And, this is a good time to remind everyone, if you see a flooded road, do not try to drive through it.
No, absolutely not.
Turn around, find a different route, heed those warnings from authorities.
Yeah, like the Southern Marin Fire District, they always put out good info.
Exactly. Safety first. Always.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of forces of nature.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about those earthquakes. A whole series of them shook the city on Friday. And the epicenter was right by the San Francisco Zoo.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, we all know the Bay Area sits on the San Andreas Fault, but is there more to it than that? Like, why the zoo specifically?
Right. Well, it's not actually the San Andreas Fault directly that caused these tremors.
Oh, really?
No. There's a whole network of smaller, interconnected faults running through that part of the city.
So it's like a spider web of fault lines.
Exactly. Faults like the San Bruno Fault and the Lake Merced Fault.
Okay, those are the ones that were shaking things up.
Yep. And these smaller quakes, while not necessarily dangerous on their own,
Right.
they're like little clues for geologists.
Clues about what?
They help them understand how these fault systems interact and release stress.
So it's like a puzzle, and these smaller quakes help us see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And, even though these recent quakes were relatively small,
Right.
they're a good reminder.
That we live in earthquake country.
Exactly. The Bay Area has a long history of seismic activity.
Yeah, no kidding.
And understanding these smaller events can help us be better prepared.
Prepared for the big one.
Yeah. The one we know is inevitable.
Okay. So we've got dramatic high tides and a cluster of earthquakes. I know, right? Both reminders that the Bay Area is a pretty geologically active place. What stands out to you in all of this?
What I find most intriguing is the question of resilience.
Resilience.
Yeah. We know these events, both the tides and the quakes, are going to happen. So the question is, how can we as Bay Area residents be better prepared?
That's a great point.
What steps can we take to minimize the impacts?
Like, what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, for starters, do we have adequate evacuation plans in case of flooding or a major earthquake? Are our homes and infrastructure earthquake resistant? These are questions we need to be asking ourselves constantly.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the wow factor of these events.
Oh, yeah.
But the real takeaway is to think about preparedness and community resilience.
Absolutely.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's all take a moment to consider how we can each do our part to keep ourselves and our community safe,
I couldn't agree more.
in the face of these powerful natural forces.
Yeah. We've got to be ready.
Exactly.